What was it about Denzel Suitt's case that made you want to do your investigations with that?
Okay, so actually it kind of starts, funny enough, it starts with me putting out an article, okay? So originally, when he was indicted, there was never an announcement from the prosecutor's office, which is a very rare thing, to not have the prosecutor's office announce indictment of a police officer. But I did get tips from people sources I have in the Jersey City Police Department. And this whole story was about how he got busted was that he met this alleged victim on the steps of the South District, and he gave him back the money that he allegedly stole. And I kind of just took it for what it is, because there was an officer indicted. Everybody was repeating this story. It was just kind of wildfire out there, and I had really no reason not to believe that, even though the prosecutor's office wasn't giving me a statement about what had happened. I just had that indictment that just has the two charges, that the theft of $600 and the official misconduct tied to that, because he was a police officer on duty during this alleged theft.
Just to remain in context, I'm sorry, when did this take place?
Okay, so
I've read the article, but just so the viewers are,
Exactly.
familiarized with what's going on.
So on March 24th into March 25th, there was an alleged robbery of a gentleman by the name of Jermaine Palms. We're going to talk about him. And it allegedly happened involving Officer Suitt and his partner that day, Officer Kevin Osorio, according to the prosecutor's office. And they reported it. They went through the whole process. There was a lot of things that happened, but essentially my story then came out. And after my story came out, I got a lot of blowback, specifically from black cops who called me up and said, "Mike, this is dirty. How could you put this out here? This is all lies. This guy wouldn't do it, blah, blah." And I kind of was like, yeah, whatever. You're sticking up for your guy, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I'm going to follow something. If someone tells me, this is what it is, what you printed is wrong, I'm going to take accountability for what I wrote, and I'm going to look into it. Off the bat, after, a couple cops said things to me, I ended up doing a follow-up story where I started expressing questions, like specifically, why didn't they announce this? I reached out to the alleged victim. They didn't want to talk about it. There was a lot of just some stuff. I threw it out there. And, everybody was like, just wait until this trial, whatever it is. And I said, I'll be there. And, I wasn't actually at the time planning on going, but I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. And right before this trial started, a day or two before, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
Okay, so we have to clarify the year.
2020. So it was actually February in 2020, right before COVID hit, that this trial started. So one of the reasons I'm reporting on it now is because all the sentencing and everything got postponed. And right as I was about to write it, COVID took over, and couldn't write an article about anything other than COVID. So I was like, this is going to sit. The George Floyd situation happened. That I was like, this isn't the right time to put this out. And then finally, by the time I started reporting this in January, it was like, more and more there was this space to report this story and get it out there and have people talk about this.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and I guess ultimately the reason I showed up at that trial was because I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to know, I wanted, and I walked in there, to be honest, 50-50.
Thank you.
The fact that I was invited, I was told, go to this trial, watch what you're going to see. You're not going to believe what you said. I'm like, why would they go through this? Why would they indict him? And I, to be honest with you, that I can't answer. But after watching that trial and seeing the evidence outside the trial that was never presented, I have a lot of questions, and I do believe, at the very least, he was railroaded, if not, a huge injustice even beyond that. But this was a prosecution where a man, and unfortunately, you were just talking about racism and whatnot. You have a black cop that walked into that courtroom, and I believe he was guilty until proven innocent. And that is the worst place you could be. That's not what America's about. America shouldn't be about that. I know you just had a conversation about racism. And it's funny that you brought up VP Harris, because there's a lot of similarities on the local level between her and Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez, where there's those types of complaints where people are screaming out for justice on a whole plethora of stories that happened with the Jersey City Police Department that never got prosecuted in this case. And that's why there was a press conference that B.L.E.S.C had. You had Frank Gilmore, you had Principal Gadsden, and you had Mario Moody from Jersey NAACP. So it wasn't just black officers from B.L.E.S.C that was there.
It was the community.
You had community activists, the same ones that every single time there's something that happens with the police, they're screaming for justice and nothing ever happens. And they ask the obvious question: why was this case prosecuted? Nobody ever asked for it. Nobody knew about this.
So let's go with just that as the beginning. Why this case?
I can't answer that question for you right at this point. I mean, I have theories, but I can't answer that question directly.
Okay.
But based off of, I've read the article, right? And what I read in the article, some of the things that you detailed, the timeline of events, it seemed to me, And, I'm not in law enforcement, obviously. But it seemed to me like things just didn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with that, but with the evidence, with the witness statements. They conflicted each other. So could you just elaborate on that if you can?
Okay, so let's start with what the prosecutor's story was, to the jury. The story was on March 24th, he was at his aunt's home in East Orange, where he was residing. He borrowed $600 because he was supposedly moving to upstate New York, to Corning, New York, for Section 8 apartment.
When you say he, can you be clear?
Jermaine Palms, excuse me.
Okay.
So Jermaine Palms, the alleged victim, was at his aunt's house in East Orange. His then girlfriend comes to pick him up. When she comes to pick him up, she allegedly supposedly signs a promissory note, okay, and this gets complicated because there's two promissory notes, but she supposedly signs a promissory note for $600. And then, they travel from, according to the prosecutor's office, they then travel from East Orange. The girlfriend and Palms travel to the girlfriend's mother's home on Bidwell and Ocean in Jersey City. And she goes inside and leaves him with the car and says, go pick up your brother. He had a god brother who supposedly lived on Boyd and West Side. And, they were supposed to drink that night before she was to drive them both to upstate New York and pay the security deposit for this apartment that next day, early that morning, around 4 a.m. they were supposed to leave.
Okay.
So that was the story, that they travel from East Orange. Then they get to her house. He takes the car. He goes to Boyd and West Side to pick up his godbrother. Okay.
And whose story is this? This is Palm's story.
This is Palm's story,
based off the prosecution. Okay, gotcha.
Which the prosecutor's office presented without any other view of anything. They presented his story exactly how he said it to the jury, or close to exactly how he said it. Let's say that. He says he goes to Boyd and West Side to pick up his godbrother. Then he goes to the doghouse on MLK and Orient, according to their timeline, which you never see any CCTV video of. There was no video, even though there's a lot of cameras out over there at this doghouse, Columbia Tavern, but they never picked up any CCTV whatsoever. Or at least if they did, they didn't present it in the trial.
That's a little sketchy there.
He then, they bought some alcohol there, and then they left and they go to Bayside Park. They park on the end of, I believe it was Richard Street. There's like a dead end right there. They park over there, and they begin to, they're having a couple drinks in the car. They're hanging out, and at that point, allegedly, two officers roll up. Mr. Officer Suitt and Officer Osario roll up. They roll up on the car, show us your license, registration, the whole 9 yards. The guy gives it out, step out the car, take everything out of your pockets, put it on the car. Then he takes the wallet, Officer Suitt, that's what he says to Palms, excuse me. He has Palms step out the car, Mr. Palms, put your stuff over there, that's what Suitt says. Suitt then takes his wallet off the car, allegedly, steps to the side, he's allegedly going through the wallet, he brings the wallet back, you're good to go, they leave, the two officers. Mr. Palms, feels a little funny, whatever, but everything's okay. He goes to Domino's on Communipaw Avenue after. This is according to the prosecutor's office timeline, okay? Just to be clear, this is just what they claimed, the state. He goes to Domino's on Communipaw, and at this point, he recognizes that he had lost this money, okay? So he doesn't have this $600 anymore. He's like, oh, I can't find it. It was in my wallet. Now it's gone. It had to be this cop who stole it. And then his godbrother who was with him at Domino's, they're going crazy. They start calling 911. Supposedly at that time, they leave, and they're going from Communipaw, Domino's to Bidwell and Ocean, okay? And that, at that point, they're supposed to meet some other officers. They do. At a later point, 15 minutes later, this timeline, then eventually there's other calls with the dispatcher, and then they call the district. They show up to the district for about 3 minutes, and that's about it from the prosecutor's story. But, that they tried to show that these guys made an effort to make a complaint, which is, a positive inference for this alleged victim, that they made an effort to do that. And that's kind of, their story. And now we're going to go back to what they didn't present, okay? So there's a lot of things that they didn't. And starting off, so I said that the state presented that he traveled from East Orange to Bidwell and Ocean with his then girlfriend, and then the then girlfriend gives him the car to go inside, okay? Her statement to the prosecutor's office is very different. Very different. Her statement is that she drove from East Orange to pick up the godbrother. They pick him up, then they go to Ocean, Bidwell, and she parks in a community lot over there. There's a little housing, and there's a lot right there, if people know that area. And, says stay in the car. She goes inside, they take the vehicle, and they leave. She never gave them permission, according to their statement, to leave. According to her statement, she never gave them permission Palms to take the vehicle and go wherever, pick up alcohol, drink, and all that. She's very clear about that. And that right off the top calls into question a lot of things that from the prosecutors.
Because it's two different stories. Her
Right.
story says that they were together and they went to get the godbrother, whereas his story says that he took her to the mother's house first and then he left with the car.
Correct.
So right then and there seems to be some type of issue with the timeline of events.
Correct. And that raises one really big question, because the prosecutor's office says after she allegedly gets out of the car and goes inside her mother's house and he takes the car, he goes to pick him up. But he's already in the car, according to her.
Did they ever get a statement from the godbrother?
Yes, they did, and it's kind of all over the place. I don't want to go too much into it because
gotcha.
it was very confusing. He obviously had a drinking issue, so it kind of made, there was kind of like statements that were off. There's a lot of statements that are off between his statements and what he said in the courtroom. It's just, I think the bigger issue is to focus on Palms. But just saying that they went, and it's funny that you said that, by the way, about the statement, because these guys at one point in the night, they show up at the Jersey City Police Department South District, okay? And when they're there for 3 minutes. But the officer, whoever met him at the door, whoever spoke to him, the Jersey City Police Internal Affairs never took a statement from him, okay? And what you're gonna find out is, and I know that there's gonna be some Jersey City cops that, know all about this, and it's a practice that stopped, but there used to be something called like the early blow flip. And it was something where somebody who was working on the desk would leave early, and somebody that was out in patrol would come in and relieve them, and they would take the desk. So somebody would leave halfway through their shift. And this guy who they claim picked up the phone, and this guy who they claimed, was at the door when they get there, and they put this in the closing arguments, the prosecutor, it appears he wasn't there. And actually, when you hear the call from the South District, I know he's having a laugh because there's another officer who actually is a black officer, and you can kind of tell that it sounds like a black man's voice, it has like that deep black man's voice to it, kind of. That, I don't know, maybe like the State Farm guy.
What are you trying to say, Mike?
I'm just saying, it's like that blues. I don't know. It didn't.
That's it. Let's forget. I'm going to deal with it.
That it was a lot of police officers, including black officers, who do know who the guy is that I said we most likely picked up the phone. We're like, yeah, that's him. So I guess, a lot of people do know that. And it was obviously it was not the person they presented, but Internal Affairs knew that. And they knew that about this early blow flip thing, and they didn't ask for a statement because they most likely 100% knew he wasn't there. And then if in that process while you're doing this, you just found another crime that took place. Okay, so there's a lot right there.
Wow.
So you have that. You had the situation where the girlfriend conflicts him on another thing, although she gives secondhand testimony where they ask her, did you know if they went anywhere else that night? She says Domino's, okay? And they asked her, did they go to Domino's before or after Bayside Park? And she said before. Now that's secondhand testimony, but she said they told me before, and that blows up the whole time.
I mean, based on it being her vehicle,
Yes.
and based off her saying that she never let them or she didn't
Yeah.
give them permission to take the vehicle, it seems like to me she would be the one who could have, clear-cut timeline of what actually happened and where they actually went.
Well, I don't. She could have I guess, an idea of the timeline, maybe of whenever she went in, but you can't really say that she knew that they went where they went.
Where they went,
So
at what
she doesn't
time.
have, And the other part and where it gets crazy is this Domino's CCTV, which is the prosecutor's office, their key piece of evidence. Okay, and this time they claim that if you see 12:44 on this clock, it's really 1:44. It's only an hour behind. But when at 12:59:59, the clock switches to 1300. Which is military time for 1 p.m.
1 o'clock in the
Okay,
afternoon.
and the time on the date continues to say March 24th, even though they're claiming it's now March 25th at 2 a.m. in the morning.
So is it possible that they went to Domino's the day before?
It's
And they didn't go to Domino's?
I can't really say. All I could say is that timestamp does not show me anything. I have no clue when they were there based off of that timestamp. And there is another issue where the then girlfriend, said that they went back after they went to the South District, that they went back to Domino's, okay? And that when they went back to Domino's, they were looking for the wallet. So if you went to why would you go back to Domino's if you know the cop stole it? And he never has told the prosecutor's office that he went back to Domino's again.
So was there any CCTV footage that suggested that they went back a second time?
They never acquired, I guess, footage that far out.
Okay.
So now are they saying that the whole wallet went missing? Or
So
this money was removed from a wallet?
So
I'm
they're
kind of confused.
they're saying, all right, I'll answer that. That's a great question. They're saying that money was removed from the wallet, and they're claiming that he's going through the wallet and looking at it at Domino's. Although you really can't see that. It looks like he's just patting all his pockets, looking for money in your pockets, but he's not looking for a wallet because you never really see him pull anything out, go through anything. And he threw the wallet out, I think the next day or the day after, because he was so angry about what had happened.
Wow.
So he never had a
Wow.
wallet when he went to internal affairs, and they actually
Wow.
were just doing these imaginary things during the trial. Okay, well, what did the wallet look like? Oh, it was like a triangle wallet with the Velcro, and it flips back, and it was like under here. Like you have to open it up 3 times over.
So this is has a magnet in it. There was no magnet in the,
It's folded.
right, this is a bifold, 1, 2, right? And there's a magnet in this wallet.
Yes.
Was there a magnet in your wallet on March 20th? What, if anything, kept the wallet shut?
Oh, because it folds in the back it sticks
Did it fold like this, a bifold, or something else?
like twice,
1, 2,
3.
and 3, so a trifold, right? Okay.
So he don't even know what his wallet looks like.
I mean, he did, I guess. He was trying to describe it, but I mean, we're talking about a piece of evidence that would be key, and he threw it out because he was angry.
So
I just find it strange that officers stop you or whatever, however they encountered each other. And when does a police officer go through someone's wallet? They ask for license,
Registration and
ID.
insurance. Mhm.
When do they go through wallets? How were they able to identify the officers? How did they pick out Denzel?
Okay, so this is really where it gets really
good
crazy.
question.
So if you want to talk about, we're talking about race in general, forget about racism. They put a black man in a lineup with an Asian guy. Okay, so you already know that there's funny business going on because they speak about him in these transcripts, both the Palms and the Godfather.
Godbrother.
They talk about him being the Chinese guy. I hate to say it like that, but that's what he said it. And the guy I believe is Filipino, but they were saying they clearly put an Asian guy in there, and he was, I believe, the only black person in this lineup, and it was supposed to be a lineup, I guess, Spanish per se, and it's just a little funny because there was just a lot of things wrong with it, but just the lineup itself was just suspect how they went about it, and he clearly kind of sticks out a little bit more than some of the other guys. And another thing that's kind of interesting, so I actually have a document here, and it's funny that you said that about the identification. So I haven't reported this yet, but Mr. Palms, in his statement to the prosecutor's office, did actually say that he had spoken with police officers after this alleged, theft, and they told him about, that these are the guys and they've been going around robbing people. And I just want to read this off to
Wow.
you real quick.
Wow.
So, and I'm going to tell you about the implications of that with the identification in a second.
So just to be a little bit more clear, you're saying that Palms said that other officers said to him that this is the officer that
Correct. All right.
it has a history of. Is that what you're saying? Could you just make
Correct.
that
So I'm going to
point
read this
okay.
statement. So this is him to the prosecutor's office where they're asking him, they at first they're pretty much asking him, have you ever had any interactions with this cop? He said, no. And then he said, and C. Wright, I'm not going to put the other cop underneath the bus that was with him, but I know somebody that works the force, and it got back to me a couple days later that them same 2 guys was driving around, so I'm not lying. And then even at another point, he really says, he gets it specific, he said about the cop that he spoke to, who he won't give his name up to the prosecutor's office, and they don't seem from the question that they're asking, very interested to know who he was talking to. He said one's a rookie and the other one been there already. So when did
Wow.
so who would have known about this, okay? And it really raised the question, did he speak to this police officer? We don't know who this police officer is.
Right.
Did he speak to him before, and before going into internal affairs and was able to identify him based off of that, possibly.
Wow.
You know, that's real bizarre, man, and it's unfortunate if those factors are true that these things had to happen. Now, wish we had more time, Mike, but I also want you to tell us what happened in the case briefly, quickly. Far as is it the trial still going on? For those who are not aware, what was the outcome of the trial?
The outcome of the trial, he was found guilty by the jury. But the jury's verdict was kind of crazy. So the jury's verdict was he was accused by the prosecutor's office of stealing $600, and he was found guilty by the jury of a theft of $500 or less. And then on the official misconduct charge tied to the theft, directly tied, it was a benefit no greater than $200. So if you were accused of stealing $600, you
Right.
stole $500 or less,
Right.
and then on the official misconduct, the benefit isn't
It's
greater
only
than-
200.
So, and it goes back to guilty until proven
Proven
innocent. You know what? We're gonna, you're gonna be found guilty no matter
Of something.
what. Of something. We're
Of
gonna find-
something.